Welcome everybody. My name is Adrian Amandi. I'm the director of the California Education Resource Center. Welcome to our penultimate Tuesday Tea for 2020-21. We do have one next week, but then we'll take a break for the summer and come back to you after the summer for a new school year. It is crazy. We're at the end of the year. It's also crazy that we just spent a year online. It's crazy that several years after we've all kind of got our ends in gear and started making things even more accessible, that we are still learning how to make things accessible. And I think today's presentation is in part a broad statement of we're still learning. That involves Microsoft and Google and the internet as a whole. Accessibility is an evolving critter, and it's something that depends on the people accessing it. And our goal and our hope is that we have universally accessible material to anyone we present it to. Specifically for everyone attending this, we're trying to make it accessible to screen reader users, and we're trying to be conscious of low vision users so that our content and material is as accessible as possible. It's not always perfect. And so you'll hear today that you're not gonna necessarily get a prescribed list of stuff, but you'll get some really good advice. So I am thrilled to introduce Winnie Chen, who everyone who's been coming to Tuesday Teas knows has been running this business all year long, but she's going to present on accessibility, as well as Tammy Bacon. Tammy, thank you so much. She joins us from the Department of Education, the Technology Services Division for our state, and Yurika Vu from our Assistive Technology Center. And you probably won't hear much from me the rest of this time, but thank you all for joining us.
Can you all see the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about Microsoft Word accessibility, just the basics, and just a little introduction. My name is Tammy Bacon. I'm from the California Department of Education, as Adrian mentioned, and I work in the Technology Services Division, and I primarily work with the state special schools and diagnostic centers, working on web accessibility for the web postings for those agencies. I've been doing web accessibility for approximately 20 years, probably more than that, really long time. And I'm going to be covering today Microsoft Word accessibility basics, why accessibility is important, and how to create an accessible Word document. So why? Why is accessibility important? First of all, it's the right thing to do, and I think all of you are advocates for that. I believe, and that's why you're here learning more about accessibility. It also provides a better user experience for everyone. Also, finally, it's the law. It's a part of ADA, Section 504 and Section 508, which was refreshed in January 18th of 2017 and became effective of January 18th, 2018. And the reason I talk about that is I think that really brought things even closer into view in terms of trying to make not only the web, but documents accessible. And so how do we do that? How do we create an accessible Word document? So we follow the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. It's called WCAG. So you may or may not have heard of that. It's pronounced WCAG or WCAG. You might hear it different ways. And generally the standard performance level that you want to conform to is level AA. And there's a link to the quick reference guide. It's a lot of information, so I can't really cover it here, but there's a link for you there. And it's https://www.wcag21/quick ref, and that is QUICKREF/. That will give you an overview of the levels of conformance for A, AA, and AAA. And again, primarily we're looking at conforming with AA. So the reason I mentioned the previous laws was because in Section 508, conformance now covers documents, including Word. And it points specifically to WCAG on how to do that. I'm sorry, it's actually with the WCAG update refresh. So I'm going to demonstrate how to create an accessible Word document and how to add an accessibility tab to Word to help you better and more quickly review a Word document. Oops, sorry, let me close this. So let me open the Word document and share this with you. Okay. So this is a Word document. It's about 2 pages. It has some basic things that most Word documents have. It has what you might see as a heading and some paragraphs, maybe some columns, bulleted list, a table, and a graphic. But this particular document, while it looks nicely formatted and for visually it looks nice, but in terms of accessibility, it's not very accessible. So what I want to show you is first the accessibility checker in Word, and I'm going to use this accessibility tab. It's a quick feature that I'm going to show you at the end of the demonstration how you can create this for yourself. But on this tab for myself, I have all my tools that I use when I'm checking a Word document for accessibility. And over here on the right, it says check accessibility. And just for future reference, you can also get to the accessibility checker under review and check accessibility and check accessibility. So you can get there multiple ways if you have the accessibility tab as well. So if I'm checking the accessibility, you can notice that there's missing alternative text on images. Images aren't in line, which causes issues for screen reader users. And the table, it's inconsistent and it doesn't know this reading order and it doesn't know it's actually a data table. So there's issues there with the accessibility checker. And then there's also another tool that's nice to review with. On the accessibility checker, it's under navigation pane, but you can also get to it from view and then check the box under show navigation pane. And over here under headings, it says that this is create an interactive outline of the document, and that interactive outline is actually created when you have real headings in a Word document. And you can see this Word document doesn't have any real headings. It's only formatted pretty. So the first heading that says Information and Communication Technology ICT Accessibility Session, it is bolded, Arial font size 16, and then the paragraph below it, it's a paragraph, which is fine. Then the following heading, which is the next level heading, is also normal text. It's Arial, bold, 14 font. So I think you kind of get the idea. This is not an actual bulleted list. It's actually tabbed over under objectives with hyphens rather than bullets. Under the next section, session organization, section presentation. If you have a column, if you have columns and use spaces or tabs to create the columns, it can actually read really incorrectly to a screen reader user if they're listening to this document. And it either won't make sense or it could be completely wrong. In this case, if you read across, it would say equal access requires bad design, not an accessible document designed with accessibility in mind. So that's definitely not something we would want to convey. And accessibility laws, accessibility tools don't matter. Forget about them. So that's definitely not something we want to convey to our screen reader user. Tables also without headings. If you're tabbing from cell to cell in the table, it's difficult to understand what cell correlates to what column heading. And when you have merged information, it's definitely hard to navigate that because it doesn't really correspond. You don't know where you are in the table. So it's easy to get lost.
Tammy, can I interrupt you for 1 second? I'm sorry,
Absolutely.
I didn't think about it a moment ago. Can you just increase your word magnification, just like your, so we can see the screen a little bigger?
Yes, thank you. So thank you for that. Yes,
There you go. Perfect.
just a little bit. Okay, so let me scroll down here. And then the final one I wanted to discuss are images. It's important to have appropriate alt text for an image. This has no alt text, but you also don't want to mark it as decorative because this has context to it. It's not a decorative image, and it's important to explain what this image is. And I'll show you what I mean in the next section. So let me close that. And the other issue with this image is the color contrast. It's if someone were, say, colorblind or using a screen read, or printed this document, they wouldn't be able to tell what these pretty colors mean. And let me see if I can demonstrate that for you. Let me. So if someone were looking at it who maybe had an individual who may be colorblind, they may see this. And it's very difficult to know, to correlate which age ranges go with which chart image. So, and then if you print this document, another issue is it prints and you still can't tell what's happening with this image. You don't know which age range goes with which part of the chart. So that's another reason, in addition to possible color blindness issues, to make sure that you have appropriate color contrast. So let me open my other document here. So what I'm going to walk you through is actually how to create an accessible Word document. So hopefully this will be quick. Let me share my screen again. Okay, so first of all, you want to make sure you create a heading rather than just bolding the text. So you can select I'm going to select the first line, Information Communication Technology, ICT Accessibility, and I'm going to mark it with the heading 1, and that's up here in the Styles menu. There's various styles you can create or are already available for you, but I'm going to mark this one with the heading 1. Okay, and then this is our next paragraph. And then below that paragraph is the word overview. So I'm going to mark that with a heading 2. So I'm going to go back up to my style menu and select heading 2. And say I don't like this color. You can actually change the color. And I want to use maybe a blue. Let's go a little darker or a little lighter so we can tell. I'm going to use blue. And say I like this for my heading 2, but if you choose this again, you end up getting, you get the style that's already there. So what you can do is change your font color to the color you like or the style that you like. And then you can right click up here on the style menu for heading 2 and choose update heading 2 to match selection. So now when I go down to objects to mark my next level heading 2, now that's heading 2 is updated for this document to be that style. So I'm going to go ahead and mark the next one, and I'm just so on and so forth. This is actually heading 3. So I'll go ahead and mark that. This is heading 3, so I'll go ahead and mark that. And I think I have, that's actually heading 2. And heading 2, I guess that's already marked. So, okay. So that's the first thing I wanted to cover is headings. Now let's go back to the navigation pane again, which is, sorry, trying to move my controls here, is under view, and then in the show section, navigation pane. Now you can see we have a nice structure to this document. So not only is it nicely structured for the sighted person, but also someone using a screen reader can bring up a window where they can actually tab through each of these headings and find the location in the document that they're interested in. It's really great and really important for longer documents. So let me go ahead and close this, but that's the navigation pane. The next thing I wanted to talk about are bulleted lists. It's really important to have a bulleted list rather than just a hyphen, because when a screen reader user comes to this list, it will tell them that it's a list, first of all, and then how many items are in the list. So be sure to go to the Home tab and use the bulleted list in the paragraph section for bullets. Columns, I'm going to create columns out of section 1 and section 2. The easiest way to do that so that they read correctly is to list them so that they're right after one after the other, and then you can select the text. So I'm selecting section 1 and section 2, and then choose layout and columns and 2 columns, and then that makes 2 columns so that when it reads down the first column and then down the second column, so it reads correctly. Tables. For tables, it's important to have a header row.
Sorry, I have a question. Is that okay?
And it's important to make sure that any merge cells that you break into
Tammy,
Yes.
sorry, I think someone unmuted and said they had a question.
Oh, I'm so sorry, I couldn't hear.
If that's okay, sorry. I didn't know if I was allowed to interrupt you.
Oh, it's fine.
I had a question about the columns thing. So when you had columns and it was section 1 and section 2, so those were both the same heading then? Those are both heading level 3, I guess?
These are both heading level 3 because they come under session organization.
Okay.
But they're both a heading level 3. Yes, that's correct. Because they're at the same level. Yes.
And it knows to separate the columns because if it's 2 separate headings, then it knows to start a new column.
That's a really good question. So no, not necessarily. I think we got lucky here. You probably, if for some reason the columns don't break where you want them, I think it's because these are equal lines. If it doesn't break where you want it to break, you can, and I'm going to use the show hide. I'll do it right here. There's on the Home tab, it's a show hide control in the paragraph area. And so I can see that there's not a section break here. What you would need to do is, if you wanted to force the break here, you can choose to go directly after where you want it to break, and then choose also under layout, breaks, and then choose column.
Okay, got it.
And then I can delete that paragraph break. And it looks like I have to reapply my heading.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm going to turn off the show hide because it looks a little busy. But that was a very good question. Thank you for asking. Okay, so the other important thing is for tables is to break. If you remember before, these were merged cells because it was for the same date. The easiest thing to do is make it simple. Keep the table simple and break it into more rows or maybe 2 tables if necessary. The more simple the table, the easier it is to make accessible. So for this table, we want to make sure we associate the column headings with each of the cells below them. So to do that, you select the column headings, and I'm going to go over here to the accessibility tab. There's a couple ways you can do it. You can right click on that top row and choose table properties. We'll go that way. And then choose the row tab under table properties and check the repeat as header row at the top of each page and say okay. So now the assistive technology user would know that's the header row, and these cells below each column would be associated with that heading when it's being read. So the next thing I want to do is select the entire table. And again, here you can right click, or I can go to the accessibility tab. I'll show you the other way. And then here I can choose table properties. And also under row, where it says allow row to break across pages, I'm going to uncheck that box, and I'm going to say okay. The reason for that is because you would not want this. Let me go ahead and just add a couple lines in here, which you shouldn't do like this. But you can see now that I have the header row, it repeats also on the next line, but it won't repeat for a screen reader user. And also, this keeps like this row from breaking. If I add some text, it keeps the row from breaking in the middle, and it makes sure it keeps that row together. And that's also important for a screen reader user. So let me back some of this out here. Okay. Any questions on that?
I think that's so important, Tammy, and a lot of us don't recognize or understand that screen reader users have settings different to their own as a screen reader, and we're familiar with just the student we use and the settings they have to their screen reader, but you can have it read row content and column content differently based on your settings. And so that particular break of a row is going to work for 100% of screen reader users, not just the ones that have their settings a certain way. So that's a big deal.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. Yeah, that's important. Okay, thank you. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about, and this is maybe a little more important when you convert it to PDF, which I think Winnie's going to talk about, but because it will flag as an accessibility issue. But when you select a table, you want to provide, for a table, you want to provide a table summary or a brief description, especially if that table, it has merged cells and has some complex, it's a little bit more complex. You especially want to describe how it's to be read or how the information is structured within that table. But providing a brief table summary is a good idea. Again, it'll get flagged in the PDF. And so to do that, you select the table, and again, you can right click, or I'm going to go to the accessibility tab and go to table properties. And it's actually the alt text. And this is where you want to provide the alternative text, or what will be the table summary. And I just say that it's the date and the time, the day, the date, time, location for the ICT accessibility sessions. So that way, if a screen reader user lands on this table, they'll have a little bit of information about it before they actually, my understanding is they have to change into another view in order to listen to what's in the table. So that will help them decide if they want to actually listen to the table. Let's see, the last thing I wanted to talk about is images. This image is, let's see if I can bring this to -200. So this image, it helps if you're going to use color. It's okay to use color to convey information as long as you use another method to convey the information as well. So in this table, you'll see that there's some diagonal lines and some horizontal lines and some check boxes and some checkered squares. So to differentiate the different age ranges for this table. And the last thing is the alternative text. And to add alternative text, the reason you need to add alternative text to a table is so that you can convey the same information that, for images, is so that you can convey the same information that's in that image to someone who can't see the image. So it's important to describe the image and the information you're trying to convey with that image in text, in the alternative text. So let me go to the alternative text for this. And for this, this is the alternative text that I provided. Percentage of Americans with a disability by age range, 8% under 15 years old, 21% sorry, let me start over. Percentage of Americans with a disability by age range, 8%, under 15 years old, 21%, age 15 and older at 17%, age 21 to 64 and 50%, age 65 and older. So that's all the information that's in the graph. So it's important to describe it completely. If it is decorative, Word does have the ability for you to mark it decorative. So under the alternative text, there's, this is relatively new, so depending on your version of Word, you may not have it, but there's a mark as decorative box. And that will allow screen reader users to skip over this because it's just decorative. I don't recommend using decorative, and someone else may be able to chime in on this, unless it's truly decorative, unless it's maybe a line or you know, a dot or a square, something that really doesn't mean anything, and it's maybe a flower or something, possibly, if it doesn't have any information that it's providing to the end user. In other words, if you could delete it and it doesn't matter, then that might be okay to mark it as decorative. If you can't describe all of the information in the alt text that's conveyed in the image, say it's a very complex chart, you need to describe it either adjacent to the image in the text, or provide an adjacent link to the image that would take it, say, to an appendix or somewhere where that information is described in more detail. And you would provide that information in the alt text as well. You could say, you know, additional information, or this chart's described above in the text or below in the text. So it's important to let the person know where they can find the information that's described in the image. And that's all I have for Word, with the exception of showing you how to create your own tab with accessibility items on it. Do you have any questions so far? Yes, James?
Is there a text limit for the alt text? Like,
Oh, great question. So for our department, our limit is 30 words or less. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. And maybe one of the other presenters can talk about what screen reader users might, what the limit might be for them. But for our department, it's 30 words or less. Great question. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is accessibility tab. To add any tab to your Word tabs, it's pretty easy, really. You can choose File and Options, and then down the left-hand column, choose Customize Ribbon. And that actually brings up all your ribbons that you have available to you, and all the commands that you have as well. So for the accessibility tab, or to create a tab, let me just uncheck that. And that actually hides it now. When I go back to the ribbon, it won't display. And say I wanted to create a tab just under View. I select View and I say New Tab down here from the group of tabs. And then it shows me a new tab, Custom, and I can select it and hit Rename. So I'll call it Accessibility. New tab. And then in the group is actually what's listed below the tab. So anytime you click on a tab, it's in a group. So this first group, and let me see, the first group under accessibility is Zoom. And then the second group I have here is layout and so forth. So that's going to be the grouping. So you can create your own groupings. So let me rename this, and I'll just call it print. And then under my print group, I can choose any of the commands, and there are a lot. So popular commands are listed, but you can change it to any other commands that you'd like. You choose all commands, for instance. Let me see if I can find print. And to my knowledge, I don't know if you can just type to find it. I usually just have to scroll down through the list. But anyway, let's see, we'll do me see if I can find print really quick and print documents. I'll add that, and print layout, I'll add that, for instance, print preview, print setup. So once you get, and then you can add more, you can add more tabs, you can add more groups, but I just wanted to show you this. So if I say okay, now all of a sudden, I have a new tab called Accessibility New. And if I select it, under my print group, I have all the print options I just added. So it's really easy to do that. So let me go back, File, Options, and Customize Ribbon. So I'm going to hide that and recheck this. Another thing, once you get a custom tab built and it works well and you want to share it with others, you can actually import, export, and you can export all customizations. So once you get everything the way you like it, you can export it and then send, it's just a small file that you can send to anyone. And then what they do is they come here and they would import it, that same file. And then when they import it, they would have the exact same ribbon and tabs and groups as you have. So that can be nice to share, especially if you have, if you set up an accessibility tab and it's working well for you, you can share with your, others or your agency.
That's powerful, Tammy. For all of you who are wondering, like, oh my gosh, I can't remember all that. Don't forget, we record this and you'll be able to go through it slower starting next week. But Tammy, that's powerful for a TVI because in the field, they could share that accessibility tab with their English teacher and their history teacher and the different teachers throughout to make sure that those teachers are starting off more accessible and have these same tools and means.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it is a great tool. And let me just go back and add that one and take that one away. And some of the tools that I like on it is, you have Zoom, and then what's really nice, you have tables and alt text, everything's right there. So when you're and then you also have spelling and the navigation pane and check accessibility. So everything's right there on one tab for you to review with, or even when you're actually creating the document. So I hope that was helpful. That's all I have.
That's awesome. I'm just curious. I know that the mark as decorative text, I believe, is in Office 365, so the latest version of Office. Is there anything else on there that you shared that would require a higher version of Office?
I don't believe so. I've had most everything else for a while prior to getting the newer version of Office. So I think, to my knowledge, only the mark decorative is new.
Sweet. Thank you.
So how all of this applies in Google is, how to say, Google is a little bit inconsistent in terms of navigating different headings and different accessibility features. But what I do want to show with you, I'm going to share my screen as the student with JAWS to show you some of the difficulties and challenges that they may encounter. So let me go ahead and turn on JAWS. And so obviously my is going to be really geared towards TI students with screen readers and what your student experiences.
Started screen share, meeting controls. Meeting control has been docked to the bottom.
Okay, so actually before I get into Google Docs, I want to share this
Menu to move.
That I think Adrian had created a while back, but this is in regards to Microsoft Word. And so going into the document that one of the documents that Tammy shared, that was where all of the accessibility settings were set correctly. I'm going to go ahead and navigate that and demonstrate that with JAWS.
Leaving menu.
Before I navigate away from this page specifically, to navigate different headings.
Your internet connection.
Sorry, my internet connection is unstable. So to navigate different headings in Microsoft Word, to tell JAWS whether you're typing or you're trying to navigate, you have to turn on quick keys. And it's like the navigation quick keys. So similar analogy to this would be when you're on the web with JAWS, you have to indicate when you're typing into forms mode, when you're actually typing, or you're out of forms mode to be navigating. So the keyboard command for that is insert and Z. And then so if you come down this list, there's a whole bunch of more quick keys that you can follow. But for the sake of time and for this demonstration, I'm just going to show how to navigate headings. I'm going to switch over to the Microsoft Word.
Leaving menu. End of year check in. MS Doc sample dash Word. MS Doc sample.
Okay, so here's a Microsoft Word document where accessibility, Tammy had created this to be accessible.
Heading level 1 information and communication technology left parent right parent.
So did you notice that it said heading level 1? Right now I'm just using my up in, yeah.
I'm seeing the navigation quick keys for MS. Maybe it's on another screen.
Share screen button to activate. Press
There we go.
space.
How's this?
MS Doc sample dash Word.
Right.
Edit.
So
Heading level 1 information and
so I'm just using the up and down arrow keys here, and it did say heading level 1. So if I wanted to navigate to the next heading, I would then need to turn on quick key navigation. So that's an insert Z.
quick keys on.
Okay, so you notice that it said quick keys on. And then from here, now I can press H to navigate to the next heading.
Heading 2 overview.
And I'm just pressing H.
Heading 2 objectives.
Okay, so these are just navigating. Now, if I decide I wanted to type something and I just go into typing,
No fields.
I can't type anything because I am in the navigation. I'm telling JAWS that I'm navigating. I'm not typing. So then if I wanted to go in then to type something, I have to turn off quick keys, which is insert Z again.
Quick keys off.
And then now I can type.
HELLO. OLEH.
So let me keep going down so we can hear what JAWS is reading for the different tables and the alt text.
Quick keys on. Heading 2 session organization. Heading 3 page break.
Okay, so it indicated there's a page break here.
Section 2 page 1 2 text columns. Heading 3 section 2 and dash demonstration. Text column 2. Heading 2 page break. Section 3 page 1 text column 1 text.
So do you notice it's saying section 1, section 2, section 3?
Page 2. Heading 2. Who does this affect? No more headings found.
So no more headings found. So from here, I'm just going to navigate using the down arrow.
United there isn't the percent of Americans with a disability by age range: 8% under 15 years old, 21% age 15 and older, 17% age 21 to 64, 50% age 65 and older.
So this is the alt text that Tammy had inserted for this photo. So that's a very descriptive alt text. All right, so this is how your student would navigate that same document using JAWS. The other way, so I do want to note here that that insert Z command can help you switch to the navigation mode. The student does have to remember to switch out of navigation mode in order to type. The other consideration is that many of our students are on laptop, so that insert key is not necessarily, you might have to press function, and then one of those secondary keys. So then they might end up having to press like function something plus insert to get the insert, right? And then they have to press control or that plus Z. So sometimes it can be like multiple a key command. The other option is that you can change your keyboard layout to laptop layout. So then the caps lock becomes the insert key, which is what I have on my laptop. Because my laptop doesn't actually have an insert key. So your student might not have an insert key. However, that insert key is really important to navigate JAWS, not just to navigate headings, but there's like, for example, insert F7 will get you a links list, right? So that insert key is helpful. And if your student does not have the insert key on their laptop, I highly recommend you to switch the keyboard layout to laptop mode. Another option is you can USB an external keyboard that does have an insert key.
Some of the stuff you find online that references the insert key, we'll call it the JAWS key if it's from Freedom Scientific. When you see JAWS key on the internet, it means insert.
Okay, so that's the navigating Microsoft Word portion. Now I'm going to pull up the same document in Google Docs.
Task switch, alt right arrow, navigate, leaving menus, MS Doc, menu, leaving menu, leaving menus, MS Doc, sample dot docs dash Google Docs, frame, document, content, edit, type and text.
Okay, so first of all, with Google Docs, there are two things that primarily one thing that you have to do to enable JAWS to read. So currently, I'm pressing the down arrow and it's not reading anything. And the reason why is because JAWS or Google Docs is not set for accessibility. So you have to enable screen reader support. Now, the fastest way to enable screen reader support is going over to the help menu.
Menu, help, 7 of 7.
And type in
SCREEN, full screen not checked. Toggle screen reader support, Control plus Alt plus Z not checked, 2 of 3.
Okay, so if you don't know the keyboard command to toggle screen reader support on and off is Control Alt and Z. If this is not turned on, your JAWS will not read anything on Google Docs.
Enter, frame.
And so you'll notice once I turn on the accessibility in Google Docs, you have this new menu right here next to the help menu. So if you're unsure whether or not you have accessibility on or off, you can just look over here and you're like, okay, it's on because I have this accessibility menu. The other thing that I would recommend if your student is using a Braille display, which we always recommend a student who is a screen reader user have a Braille display, is to turn on Braille support. And you can do the same thing from the help menu here.
Menu to move through item.
And type in Braille.
BAILLL menu, help search the menus, leaving menus, frame.
So that turns on the Braille support. And if I had a Braille display, now Braille would be showing on the Braille display. I do have sheets for this. So enable screen reader support.
Enables copied.
Type it into the chat here.
Enables chat. Pasted, enter.
And then here's
search with expand, copied.
How to
and pasted, enter.
Braille support.
Enable Braille support. Doc stack. Enable screen reader support. MS Docs.
So those are one of the very first things that you have to do in order to get access to the text that is on Google Docs.
Document
Now we can see here that on the left-hand side, it kind of has the table of contents of the different headings, right? There's information, overview, objectives. And so if I try to press H here, can anybody guess what's going to happen? I'm trying to navigate by headings. If I press H here, what will happen? Type it into the chat or unmute yourself and guess.
Will it go to the next level heading? Or do you have to?
There's one guess. Anybody else besides our presenters?
If you have quick key, no, it's called forms mode, right? So depending on if you have forms mode on or off, it'll either move by heading or it'll type a letter H.
MS Doc sample.
I thought that was you, Andy. Okay, so if forms mode is on, it would type the S versus navigate the S. That's a good guess. But we are in a document. So when you're in a document, you're assuming that you're always in forms mode. Okay, I'm gonna do it. Ready? I'm gonna type in H.
H.
Ah.
And it typed in H. So how am I supposed to navigate with headings if every time I'm pressing H, it's gonna type H. So in this accessibility menu
Menu. Accessibility. 8 of 8.
is a section called heading.
Accessibility. Speak as black right pointing.
So it tells me I can go to the move. I can move to the next heading by pressing this key command, Control Alt N, and then Control Alt H. I'm going to try it, and I tried this earlier today,
Schlimgen. Kathy has
and it's very inconsistent. Okay, but I'm just going to
Accessibil-
show you for this reason. Control Alt N.
leave it.
Okay, so Control Alt N.
Alt Control N.
Okay, that didn't do anything. I'm going to try H. I press Alt Control N.
H.
Still
H.
typing H. Control Alt H.
Alt Control H.
That also didn't do anything.
H. Blank. Alt Control H. Document content edit type and text.
It's telling me I'm still in edit mode. So earlier when I did this, it said something heading. It's really inconsistent. I tried the other quick key nav, so which is the insert Z.
Off.
So this is to also turn on or off the PC cursor. So if the PC cursor is off, I should be able to navigate by heading,
H.
but I
H.
still don't.
On. H. H.
All that to show you that it's really difficult and or inconsistent on how to navigate Google Docs with heading, pressing H to go through headings. Okay, so we as teachers are always creative, right? And we're like, hey, what's the workaround solution? And I even texted one of the students today. I'm like, hey, how do you navigate headings with Google Docs with JAWS? And he's like, well, you can go through the accessibility menu, blah, blah, blah. He told me how to do that. And I was like, what do you do? And he said, I just press down arrow, right? So he presses either down arrow to find what he wants.
Heading level 1 accessibility session. Unaccessible taking into the
And that'll go line by line. And the other way you can navigate paragraph by paragraph or section is control down arrow.
blank. Heading level 2 overview.
So you can hear it say heading level 2. So it is made accessible, quote unquote, made accessible, because I basically uploaded the document that Tammy gave me. The headings are there. It's just that I'm not able to navigate it using the quick keys, how it is supposed to be navigating. So honestly, in the field and or working with students, I teach them down arrow and control down arrow to navigate.
Blank. Picked accessibility. Blank. Heading level 2 objectives. Blank. Level 1. Blank. Bullet. Blank. 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 Level 0.
Okay. So surprise, not surprise. I'm sure Google is working on it, but it's not
MS Doc sample.
quite there yet in terms of being able to navigate quickly. What questions? If you guys have questions, you can type in the chat or you can ask it right here. Unmute yourself.
Hi,
I'm not sold. Jessica has a question.
When you go from Word and you
Jennifer Simmons.
you're using that, you put it in Google Docs, does most of the accessibility stuff transfer over?
I mean, technically it transfers over, like, because this is you'll notice right here it says DOCX. I basically just uploaded the Word doc to Google. If it's something that's created, like an actual Google Doc that is created, that might, I haven't tested that, but that might be the case. Like if it was an actual Google Doc and not a DOCX, then the heading navigation might work.
Okay, I see. Yeah, so I see now it's actually a Word doc there.
Yeah.
In Google, not just a Google Doc. Okay, thanks.
Okay, we don't have any other questions, and I'm gonna pass it off back to Winnie.
Joanna Lemus has left the.
Okay, thank you, Yurika and Tammy. I know it's almost 4:30, so no worries if you need to leave, but my presentation is going to be on PDF accessibility. Let me pull that now. Okay, great. So Tammy and Yurika did a really good job covering how to make Google and Word documents accessible. But what I want to talk about is how to make PDFs accessible, specifically in Adobe Acrobat. And so if you've ever shared a lesson plan or a flyer or whatever it may be that it is in a PDF format, this is a really great tool to check for basic accessibility guidelines. Ideally, documents are accessible before converting into PDF format, but that's not always going to be the case. So this is a really good cleanup tool. And what you'll need is any version of Adobe Acrobat. They're one of those companies that have created many different products over the years under different names. But what I found, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but any version of Adobe Acrobat does have the accessibility tool that I'm going to feature in a second. And I think one of my work devices has the 2017 old one, and the other one has the Pro DC. So they're all just fancy names, but they all have the same tools. And so first, let's talk about what's in the toolbox for this accessibility tool. There's a auto tagging feature, which for reference, a tag, if you're unfamiliar, a tag is an element that provides the reading structure for screen readers. And it also is what determines a sentence to be a paragraph, a heading, or if something is an image that needs alt text, that's what a tag is. And just to a quick note, if you actually convert an accessible Word doc. So if you follow all the instructions that Tammy and Yurika provided, and your Word document is pretty accessible, it has headings and whatnot, and then you convert that into a PDF, it actually carries over all those tagging structures, which are the headings, the alt text. All of that does carry over into the PDF. But when an inaccessible document is converted into PDF, then you'd have to start from scratch and use the auto tag function. But it really does help you in identifying what each element is, so you don't have to start from scratch. And the next thing is the accessibility checker. It's very similar to the Word document in that it scans the document for any missing alt text or any elements that are not tagged. And then next we have, of course, setting alternative text. And then lastly, rearranging the reading order. So I do want to preface this by saying a lot of screen readers actually reads PDF documents according to the tagging tree, which means it prioritizes what's in the tag structure that I'll show you in a sec over what the reading order is. But it's still important to set a reading order because they kind of affect each other. So with that being said, I do have to note that this isn't, well, this is a really good tool. It's not perfect. It might not help you meet all the guidelines, especially with very complex documents. But unless you're a webmaster like me and every document you post has to meet every single guideline, you can definitely use this tool to make sure something is accessible before sending it out to either students and families or just sharing something internally just to be more inclusive. There's other softwares out there like Common Look that has more of those complex tools to fix accessibility issues in PDFs, but they require a lot of training. And that's actually why we have experts like Tammy who is trained to use them. But this program, Adobe Acrobat, is fairly simple to use. So that's why I'm going to demonstrate this one. So let me first pull up let me first show how to get the shortcut on the program. A lot of times people think they don't have the accessibility tool, but in reality, it's just that the shortcut isn't there by default. So the menu on the right is where it usually would be, but if it's not there, you can just go to Tools and then Add Accessibility, and it's right there. And the second thing you need is when you have a document open, on the left-hand side, it's a very thin panel, but if you right-click it, you're gonna want two things. You're gonna want order, and you're gonna want tags. There's more than one way to get this. You can right-click and add it that way. You could also remove it, or you can go to View, Show and Hide, Navigation Panes, and then select it that way. And again, this is recorded and it'll be on our YouTube. So if I'm going a little bit fast, you can definitely refer to the recording later on. But first, I wanted to take a look at this document, just a sample document. If I open the tag tree, there's no tags available. So there's nothing, no elements that are tagged for the screen reader to read right now. But if I go to accessibility and I click auto tag document, then I go back to tags, it should generate these tags. They're kind of messy and they're not really in order. Well, they're in order, but it's a little bit messy. It could be cleaner, but at least they have what we need, which it recognized this as an image. It recognized this as a heading 1, which is great. But then it kind of skipped and went straight into heading 3. And 4, and yeah, so it's there, but it definitely needs a little bit of a cleanup. And the cleanup is not too difficult, but it is kind of a learning curve. In order to fix these, there's a couple ways to do it. But in Adobe Acrobat, you're going to click on the reading order. And this tool kind of looks daunting at first, at least it was for me when I first looked at it. Like there's so many different boxes and I didn't know what they all did. But essentially, you use your cursor, you drag it over whatever you're trying to tag, and these boxes describe what you want to tag them as. So is it text? Is it part of a paragraph? Is it a form? Is it one of these headings? Is it an image? Part of a table? So whatever it is, just tag it as that. And then I'm going to go back here, the reading order. It's a little bit easier to navigate at first. So you can see that the first thing it's going to read is the image, and then it goes into White Cane Day, come join us, the date, and then session 1, I want this to be a heading level 3. I want the session 2 that's highlighted to be a heading level 3 as well, and same for session 3. So if I go back to the tag structure, it should give me, sometimes it's a little bit weird. So you kind of have to go back and make sure everything is correct. So yes, now we have a level 3, 3, 3. And let me make sure this is a level 2. So now we have everything in order. Typically, I'd clean it up, like I would pull this out and make sure it's in a straight line instead of having it broken into different sections, but it's fine for the purpose of this demonstration. I'm going to purposefully not add a alt text for now because I wanted to show the full check option, which is just the accessibility checker. Once you hit full check, just no need to uncheck anything, click start checking, and okay, that's good. It's telling me I didn't add an alternative text, and that's easy to fix. I just have to right-click it, click fix, and then add the alternative text. So women holding a cane, and I'm not going to finish the rest, but you get the idea. Once that's fixed, the issue should go away. And then it might tell me that there's something that I'm not tagging. If it's just empty space, we can get rid of that easily. And then for now, I'm not gonna go ahead and fix it. I'm just gonna skip it for now, but usually I would go and fix it. The document issues. So even if your document is completely accessible, meaning that you've added alt text, you added your headings, they're in order. These two, the logical reading order and the color contrast, are always going to pop up no matter what. And that's because it needs manual checking. For the logical reading order, it's essentially telling you to look at the reading order, see if it looks logical, for lack of better words, to see if this is actually how you'd want a screen reader to present it. Like I said before, it's kind of, it depends on how the screen reader, or the screen reader might prioritize the tag structure instead of the reading order. So but if you have it set to the right order and it looks correct, you can go ahead and pass it. And with the color contrast, you can use, I'm gonna actually link it to the chat. It's something that Tammy introduced me to, but it's called WebAIM Color Contrast Checker. And, oh, where is my Zoom? Okay, I'll link it in a sec. But if for this one, this flyer, it's black text on white background. So it looks good. It's usually more of the colorful backgrounds and like colorful text that needs a manual checking, but it's always good to use that tool just in case. And then next we have the language. This one's an easy fix, right click, fix English. And the title, you can actually fix that by going to File, Properties, and this is something called metadata, which just means data within data. And that's when you add a title and a subject, a descriptive one. And if you have it, then you can go ahead and click Fix. So once you've fixed everything, the document should be accessible. But again, this isn't a perfect tool. So, but it's a good tool for basic guidelines. And then lastly, I just want to show you guys what it looks like if a Word document is accessible, and let's say you're trying to distribute it, but you want to distribute it as a PDF. So this document has headings, heading level 1, level 2. You can also see from the navigation pane that it also has the right headings, and the list uses the correct setting, the bullet setting, so it looks good. So if we go to File, Save as PDF, I'm going to save it. Okay, and now we have this PDF. If I go to the tag structure, it all stayed. Heading 1, it's a paragraph, Heading 2, paragraph, heading 2, list. So I'm showing this because I wanted to reiterate how important it is to make sure your documents are accessible before converting into PDF. What I did at first with the flyer is possible, but it's so much easier if whatever program you created the document in, if you made it accessible there, it's going to be usually accessible in PDF. Might need a little bit of cleanup. But yeah, that is all I have to show. Let me also put in the chat the contrast checker. See, but let me know if you have any questions. I know we're over our time limit, but we can put our emails in the chat. So if you ever want more training or more explanation, I know I went over that kind of quickly. If you want more training on it, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. But yeah, that's it from me. Yurika, Tammy, do you guys have anything else to add?
Did you want me to share how to take that specific PDF that you were working on and how to convert it to a Google Doc for accessibility?
Oh yeah, that would be really good.
Okay. So sometimes you get a PDF
meeting
like the one that
James Rudder has left them.
And there is actually a simple way to kind of OCR
Mr.
it.
Vasquez left.
OCR is optical character recognition to make it
Jessica.
accessible. accessible
Adrian
meaning it like readable.
from Quill.
It's not fully accessible in terms of the alt text. But when you have
Like-
this PDF here, what I can do is you can press the application key.
Menu.
And when you open it with
Men.
a
Open
Google
with
Doc,
submenu.
what
Leaving
happens
menu.
is it converts it. Oh, can you hear
White
my
ca-
JAWS? I can't. No, hold on.
Started screen share.
Can you hear my JAWS now?
Document content edit.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
All right, so this PDF that
Showing
that Winnie was just showing you, I opened it as a Google Doc.
white cane day dash Google Docs frame document content edit type and blank.
And from here,
Come join us for a full day of tech with Apple date October 5th.
so I wanted to share this as a simple, easy way to convert a PDF into editable text. And if it's editable, then the student can read it with JAWS and with their Braille display. The other thing that Adrian just messaged me about was that going back to the document by pressing Control-Alt-N and then Control-Alt-H to go to the next heading. It does work in terms of navigating, but
document
what JAWS reads.
Alt Control H.
So you'll see that my cursor went down to the next heading, but it doesn't read objectives. It just says Control-Alt-N, Control-Alt-H.
Alt Control H. Alt Control H.
Yurika,
So
out of curiosity, what version of JAWS are you using?
Oh, I'm on 2020.
So I'm in 2021 and I'm not experiencing any of those problems. I navigate heading to heading, graphics, table rows, all that
Send
stuff
to everyone.
with those same keystrokes, and it navigates to and reads.
Oh, that's awesome. So maybe
Nicole,
it's just a version of JAWS. I did update my JAWS today, but not to the 2021 version.
I'm hoping.
So that's actually good to know that with the newest version of JAWS, it will read.
Jennifer Simmons has left them.
It seems, I mean, it's clunky. I don't want to, sorry, I have two computers. I don't want to ignore the fact that Google keystrokes in and of themselves are a bit clunky. They're designed in part to work with the Chromebook. And so I right now I was like, I gotta test it there too. I tested it on the Chromebook too. It does involve holding two keys and then pressing one key and the next one real quick. It's not our standard, but that's a user case scenario, right? Like our users who are in Chromebooks or on in Google Docs are going to have to learn this alternative way to navigate. But I do strongly recommend, like you said, there's other ways to grab information also. So we have to teach our kids best practices and downloading things as Microsoft Word documents or
and I actually love that you brought that up because this Control-Alt-N, Control-Alt-H only works in the Google environment, right? So a lot of times we want to teach keystrokes that are transferable to other, like across the board. So for example, like earlier I was saying, if you use a down arrow or control down arrow, you can navigate almost any text this way to read and to move the cursor. So my preference is to teach not a Google specific command, but to teach something that is transferable.
I hear you.
I think that's all I have to share.
I know people are going to love this recording. You know that there's so many things you guys shared that people are going to have to go digest when they get it in front of themselves. And I'm happy that we have this on file for next year and can be something that people starting a new semester can get excited about. We also know a lot of the teachers on this call are going to work during the summer. And so that ability to make things right from the ground up, one of you said making things natively accessible just from the beginning. And I think that's important. I absolutely adore the idea of teaching other teachers how to do this. So the work of a TVI and the team supporting blind kids is not so in depth of constantly rearranging documents to make them more accessible, but to have teachers in stream make things more accessible. And problems are going to happen, and it's huge for us to have our kids learning strategies, whether it's opening the PDF in Google Docs or learning how to scan an OCR. There's so many cool techniques that our kids can learn that will enable them to participate in the real world, because the real world's not always accessible and it's tough. And we're gonna do our part to make it simpler for our kids though.